High in the Himalayas, where jagged peaks slice through clouds and glaciers feed the heavens, a river is born. From the ancient ice of the Tibetan Plateau emerges the Yarlung Tsangpo, a river that has shaped myth, nourished civilizations, and carved some of the deepest gorges on Earth. It begins its journey in western Tibet, flowing eastward before curving dramatically around the towering Namcha Barwa Massif. This turn, known as the Great Bend, is one of the most awe-inspiring natural features on the planet. Here, the Yarlung Tsangpo drops more than 2 kilometers in just 50 kilometers of flow, channeling unimaginable kinetic energy through a canyon deeper than the Grand Canyon itself. After this breathtaking descent, it crosses into India as the Siang, becomes the Brahmaputra, and finally joins the Ganges and Meghna in Bangladesh before spilling into the Bay of Bengal. For centuries, this river system has been the lifeblood of South Asia, feeding rice paddies, sustaining fisheries, and supporting over 130 million people. But now, in a remote corner of southeastern Tibet, this mighty river stands at the center of one of the most ambitious and controversial engineering projects in human history, the Madog Hydropower Station. The Great Bend, nature's powerhouse. Few places on Earth combine natural power and peril as perfectly as the Great Bend. The Yarlung Tsangpo's plunge through the gorge represents an energy drop unmatched anywhere else, an irresistible temptation for engineers seeking renewable energy sources. Yet this same region is also a biodiversity hotspot, where tropical forests collide with alpine meadows. The steep slopes host snow leopards, red pandas, and countless endemic species. Torrential monsoon rains and frequent earthquakes make the terrain treacherous, while fragile ecosystems balance delicately on unstable geological foundations. To hydropower visionaries, the Great Bend is an engineer's dream. To conservationists, it's a nightmare waiting to unfold. Harnessing such raw power promises clean electricity on a scale never seen before, but it also risks destabilizing one of Earth's most ecologically and geopolitically sensitive landscapes. From dream to directive, China's fascination with taming the Yarlung Tsangpo is not new. The first feasibility studies appeared in the 1990s, when hydropower planners began imagining what could be the crown jewel of Tibet's energy resources. The idea lingered for decades, hindered by extreme terrain, high seismic risk, and the region's proximity to India, a country with which China shares an often tense, disputed border. But in the 2020s, the equation changed. Facing slowing economic growth and mounting pressure to meet carbon reduction goals, Beijing revived its appetite for megaprojects when the 14th Five-Year Plan, 2021 to 2025, explicitly called for exploring a hydropower base on the Yarlung Tsangpo. The long-dormant idea leapt from theory to policy. In December 2024, China formally approved the Madog Hydropower project, and by July 2025, Premier Li Qiang presided over its groundbreaking ceremony. The government framed the initiative as a pillar of its renewable energy strategy and a cornerstone for economic revitalization through infrastructure. China has long used hydropower as a dual-purpose tool, advancing its climate agenda while reinforcing its geopolitical and economic influence. With Madog, it intends to prove that large-scale hydro can coexist with environmental stewardship. Though skeptics, at home and abroad, remain unconvinced, the Madog Cascade. Contrary to the image of a single towering wall of concrete, Madog is designed as a cascade system, a series of 5 run-of-the-river stations that collectively exploit the 2-kilometer drop within the Great Bend. Each stage captures the river's energy without forming vast reservoirs. Instead, water is diverted into small pools, channeled through long tunnels, some extending over 15 kilometers, and directed into underground powerhouses containing massive turbines. After generating power, the water is returned to the river, where the next station repeats the process downstream. This latter structure minimizes flooding of valleys and resettlement needs compared to traditional dams, but it demands extraordinary precision in design and construction. Each component must withstand immense hydraulic pressures and seismic forces while operating in a region accessible only by narrow, winding mountain roads. When complete, The Madog complex will boast a staggering 60 gigawatts of installed capacity, nearly triple that of the Three Gorges Dam, currently the world's largest power station. It is expected to generate around 300 terawatt-hours of electricity per year, equal to about 13% of China's 2024 electricity consumption. Enough to replace hundreds of coal plants and avoid hundreds of millions of tons of carbon emissions annually, powering a nation from the roof of the world. Because Tibet lies far from China's industrial heartlands, the electricity generated by Madog will be transmitted through ultra-high voltage power lines stretching thousands of kilometers toward coastal megacities like Guangdong, Zhejiang, and Shanghai. These ultra-high voltage corridors are a technological feat in their own right, designed to move electricity efficiently over immense distances while maintaining stability in a grid increasingly dependent on intermittent sources like wind and solar. By providing steady baseload renewable power, Madog could become the backbone that stabilizes China's clean energy transition. Beyond electricity, the project will act as a massive economic catalyst, stimulating industries from heavy equipment manufacturing to tunneling technology. It will create tens of thousands of jobs in Tibet and across China's industrial provinces. Beijing also sees Madog as a proof of concept, a model for future large-scale hydropower development in other mountainous regions worldwide. Engineering on the edge, building the impossible, constructing a project of this magnitude in one of the world's harshest environments is a monumental challenge. The Great Bend's steep slopes, some exceeding 70 degrees, are prone to landslides, earthquakes, and flash floods. Before even breaking ground, engineers had to carve temporary access roads, bridges, and aerial cable systems just to deliver equipment to the sites. Once access was secured, the true test began, tunneling through fragile, water-saturated rock. The headrace tunnels that carry pressurized water to turbines must be reinforced with sprayed concrete, rock bolts, and thick steel linings to withstand colossal stresses. Workers face dangers such as rock bursts, where pent-up geological pressure can explode outward with deadly force, and sudden underground water inflows. Each underground powerhouse, roughly 200 meters long, must be excavated in phases to prevent collapse. Given the area's seismic instability, all tunnels include flexible joints and real-time monitoring systems capable of detecting stress changes early. Slope stabilization is equally critical. Engineers are constructing vast retaining walls, drainage systems, and anchored supports to prevent monsoon-triggered landslides from destroying infrastructure. Temporary dams and bypass tunnels are required to divert the river during construction, structures that must themselves withstand extreme floods fed by glacial melt and torrential rain. Because of the harsh climate, the construction season is short. Winters freeze progress, while summers bring relentless rain, often washing away months of work. To stay on schedule, different sections of the cascade will be built simultaneously, demanding coordination among thousands of workers, engineers, and safety teams operating across a vertical landscape of cliffs and canyons. The price tag and the plan. The Madog project carries an estimated cost exceeding around $170 billion, making it one of the most expensive infrastructure endeavors in world history. Funding comes from state-owned hydropower conglomerates, policy banks, and national infrastructure bonds, a financing model typical of China's state-driven development approach. Such projects are often justified not by immediate profit, but by their long-term strategic and economic returns. Construction officially began on July 19, 2025, with an expected timeline stretching to 2033. The first few years are dedicated to geological surveys, access works, and pilot tunnels. Full-scale excavation, tunneling, and turbine installation will proceed in overlapping phases. If all goes according to plan, the first turbines could begin generating electricity by 2030, providing early returns while remaining sections of the cascade are still under construction. Full completion and grid integration are expected by 2033, though the Himalayas' unpredictable geology and weather could easily extend that deadline. Environmental and human risks. Even with advanced engineering, Madog faces a minefield of environmental and social risks. The lower Yarlung Tsangpo Gorge is one of Asia's richest ecosystems. The narrow valleys concentrate rare plant and animal species, many of which exist nowhere else on Earth. Run-of-the-river designs minimize flooding, but they still fragment habitats, alter sediment transport, and disrupt natural migration routes for aquatic species. Changes in sediment flow can affect soil fertility and fisheries hundreds of kilometers downstream, with potential consequences reaching into India and Bangladesh. The region's geological volatility adds further peril. Earthquakes, landslides, and glacial lake outburst floods are constant threats. Even minor seismic events could destabilize tunnel walls or trigger catastrophic slope collapses. China's government insists that extensive environmental safeguards and monitoring systems will mitigate these risks, emphasizing the use of green construction techniques and ecosystem restoration programs. Critics, however, remain skeptical, pointing to a history of underreported environmental impacts in large Chinese infrastructure projects, including the Three Gorges Dam. The downstream dilemma: a river shared by nations. What makes the Madog project uniquely sensitive is not only its scale, but its location on a transboundary river. The Yarlung Tsangpo becomes the Brahmaputra as it enters India, then flows into Bangladesh, two nations heavily dependent on its water for agriculture, drinking supply, and power generation. Unlike other major river basins such as the Mekong or the Nile, there is no formal water-sharing treaty among China, India, and Bangladesh. Information exchange on river flow and dam operations is limited, leaving downstream countries reliant on seasonal hydrological data provided voluntarily by China. For India, mistrust runs deep. Some political leaders in Arunachal Pradesh, through which the river flows, have warned that a megadam of Madog scale could become a water bomb capable of catastrophic release during conflict or technical failure. China maintains that the Madog project is run-of-the-river, meaning it will not store large volumes of water and therefore cannot be used to manipulate downstream flows. Yet geopolitics often hinges on perception as much as fact. Even routine operational adjustments, such as holding back water for maintenance, could be interpreted as deliberate interference in times of political tension. Bangladesh, at the river's delta, faces its own concerns. Reduced dry season flow could worsen saline intrusion from the Bay of Bengal, threatening crops and freshwater supplies. Both India and Bangladesh fear that China's unilateral actions in the upper reaches could erode their water security, compounding climate-driven challenges such as glacier melt and erratic monsoons. Geopolitics of water, power beyond electricity. Water has always been a tool of influence, and in South Asia, rivers carry political weight equal to oil. For Beijing, the Madog project offers strategic leverage, control over the headwaters of one of Asia's great transboundary rivers. While China publicly frames the dam as an environmental and developmental project, analysts note that it fits within a broader pattern of hydropolitical dominance, using infrastructure to strengthen territorial control and bargaining power. India, wary of China's growing presence in the Himalayas, views the project through a security lens. The region around Arunachal Pradesh is claimed by both nations, and heavy infrastructure development on the Chinese side raises concerns about dual-use capabilities, including rapid military logistics. At the same time, China's hydropower ambitions also mirror its domestic imperatives. The project showcases Chinese engineering prowess and provides a national unifying narrative of progress and self-reliance, an image Beijing is eager to project amid global debates over climate leadership. Environmental diplomacy and transparency. For the Madog Hydropower Station to truly succeed over the long term, the challenge for China will not only be mastering the engineering, but also cultivating trust with its downstream neighbors. Transparency in operational details, such as real-time river flow, sediment load, seasonal diversions, and infrastructure maintenance, would substantially reduce suspicion and foster cooperation. For example, the bilateral memoranda of understanding between China and India for sharing hydrological data, for example on the Brahmaputra, stipulated that China would provide water level, discharge, and rainfall data twice daily during the flood season. Hydrologists and diplomats have long pointed out that a basin-wide framework covering China, India, and Bangladesh for the Ganges-Brahmaputra-Meghna basin system could enable joint flood forecasting, sediment management, disaster response systems, and coordinated hydropower operations. Without such mechanisms, unilateral actions risk deepening mistrust and could exacerbate downstream vulnerabilities. Further complicating matters, climate change is already altering the hydrological regime. Melting Himalayan glaciers increasingly contribute to glacial lake outburst flood risk, and monsoon rainfall patterns are becoming more erratic, increasing both flood and drought hazards. Ultimately, cooperation rather than competition will determine whether the Brahmaputra basin thrives or fractures as pressures mount. A test of engineering and of diplomacy. If completed as envisioned, the Madog Cascade could become not only the world's largest hydropower facility of its kind, but also one of the most symbolically charged infrastructure projects of this century. Its annual generation potential is estimated at approximately 300 terawatt-hours, which could supply tens of millions of homes and significantly reduce fossil fuel reliance within China. In the earlier overview, the number given was about 13% of China's 2024 electricity consumption. But generating power is only part of the equation. The dam's legacy ultimately depends on whether China can demonstrate responsible stewardship, managing one of Earth's most sacred river systems without triggering irreversible ecological damage, displacement of local communities, or regional instability. On the geopolitical side, the absence of a binding water-sharing treaty between China and downstream states such as India and Bangladesh means that even technically defensible run-of-river designs might still generate anxiety. In short, this is a test not merely of turbines and tunnels, but of diplomacy, transparency, environmental ethics, and whether upstream development can align with downstream rights and regional trust. Energy, climate, and development. China's push into large-scale hydropower expansion is driven by a complex set of imperatives. Although China leads globally in installed solar and wind capacity, these renewables remain variable and often require backup or baseload generation to keep grids stable. Large hydropower, especially in mountainous areas, offers relatively steady output that can complement wind and solar, helping meet peak demand and stabilize transmission systems. At the same time, China faces domestic pressure to stimulate economic growth through infrastructure investment, especially in less developed border regions like Tibet, where the Madog project is located. Infrastructure projects of this magnitude generate employment, mobilize heavy industries, tunneling, turbine manufacturing, ultra-high voltage, transmission, and deepen the central government's influence in remote regions. On the other hand, the global sustainability trend increasingly emphasizes ecosystem integrity, community rights, and equitable development. As nations around the world reassess the trade-offs between large dams and environmental or social impacts, the Madog project straddles a line between technological triumph and moral dilemma. It will test whether green ambitions can be pursued without compromising ecological balance or displacing vulnerable populations. The river's future. The next decade will be critical in determining whether Madog becomes an exemplar of shared progress or a flashpoint of contention. If China chooses to engage downstream nations meaningfully through shared data platforms, joint research on glacial and hydrological dynamics, coordinated flood alert systems, sediment flow monitoring, and inclusive impact assessment processes, the project could serve as a catalyst for cross-border collaboration. Benefits might include enhanced flood control, clean power sharing, scientific cooperation on Himalayan hydrology, and stronger regional connectivity. But if transparency falters, incomprehensible technical decisions are made unilaterally, or downstream stakeholders feel disadvantaged, the project could deepen mistrust, provoke diplomatic disputes, and trigger calls for compensatory or preemptive measures. Even seemingly minor operational decisions, such as holding back water for maintenance during a dry season, could be interpreted as hostile if communication is missing. The stakes are immense. The Yarlung Tsangpo Brahmaputra system supports the livelihoods of millions, sustains rice paddies and fisheries in India and Bangladesh, and is embedded in cultural and spiritual traditions of the region. Any disruption reverberates far beyond megawatts and cubic meters. It touches the very essence of life for communities downstream. Between power and responsibility. High in the Himalayas, the Yarlung Tsangpo continues its ancient, glacier-fed descent, unaware of borders and politics. Yet human ambition has now bound its flow to questions of energy, ecology, and equity. The Madog Hydropower Station stands as a symbol of one of the 21st century's greatest paradoxes, the aspiration to harness nature's forces without destroying them. It embodies human ingenuity, risk-taking, and the scale of modern infrastructure, while also highlighting complexity, the challenge of pursuing a cleaner future while managing environmental and geopolitical consequences. Whether history remembers Madog as a triumph of engineering or a cautionary tale of overreach will depend not only on how many gigawatts it generates, but on the quality of diplomacy, the integrity of transparency, the fairness of downstream impact management, and the respect shown for the river that binds nations. In the Great Bend, gravity offers almost limitless power. But power, as always, comes with profound responsibility. If you found this exploration insightful, don't forget to like this video. It really helps support our channel. And if you're fascinated by stories where science, environment, and geopolitics collide, then make sure to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our next deep dive. Thanks for watching. And remember, power is not just what we generate, it's how responsibly we use it. See you in the next video.